Hello, and welcome to our first episode of the Orphic podcast, where we're talking all things beyond ordinary understanding. I am Alyssa Sokol with Interdimensional Astrophysics, and this is my co-host Mikayla with Mariposa Moonchild. Say hi.
Hey, hello, this is me. Good job. That was very good. I liked it.
Awesome. So Mikayla is going to start us off with a bit of a grounding in session. So take it away.
Yeah, we're just going to ground in quick. If you're driving or something, please don't close your eyes. Keep your eyes on the road at all times. Mm-hmm. But yeah, let's just take a second. If you're able to, shut your eyes, put your feet on the ground, maybe a hand on your heart, and just take a big breath in. Hold at the top. Open your mouth. Let it out. Deep releasing breath, and let's do 2 more. Releasing anything heavy. Releasing anything weighing you down. Anything that's not serving you. Release it in these breaths. 1 more. And also at this time, I would like you to set an intention for what you would like to call in for this day or for this podcast to bring to you. So I'm going to set the intention for clarity for myself today. I feel like Alyssa can set an intention too, and that can be based on this podcast or just in general. But I feel like it's a good thing to put out there to think about.
Great. Yeah, my intention for this first podcast is to open people's minds.
I like that.
That's my intention for the podcast in general, and especially today, because we're going to start talking about some fun things, some interesting things. So I guess to start, we're going to talk a little bit about who we each are, what we do, kind of what we're into, and then we're going to talk about why we're doing this podcast, and also a little bit about the topics that we're going to be covering and kind of some of the ideas that we're going to be talking about. So
yeah, for sure. And I think we kind of mentioned what the podcast means, like the Orphic, the word means beyond ordinary understanding. So we're here to open some minds, and we're going to have some interesting topics that we bring in, but
yeah. So I am an astrophysicist. I am finishing up my PhD shortly in the coming months. My specialty is on supermassive black holes that are in the centers of galaxies. And so my dissertation is on how galaxies evolve across cosmic time. So essentially, since the course of the Big Bang, how supermassive black holes have episodic periods of extremely high activity. And these objects, basically when these supermassive black holes are active, they're the most energetic bodies in the entire universe. Literally, they have the highest energy of anything in the universe. So I'm really interested in black holes. And of course, there's a lot that we really don't understand about them. And I'll talk about that more at some point. But that's a little bit about me. I'm I've always been very spiritual. In the last few years, I have come to begin to want to understand how the universe works from a more holistic perspective. I believe that there's a lot that traditional academia does not study about the universe. There's quantum physics, there's magnetic fields, and at this point I have a pretty good idea of what we're looking at and what we're not looking at. And I know that we have souls, and everything is conscious. The earth is conscious. The earth has a soul. The sun is conscious. Our galaxy is conscious. Our galaxy has a soul. So in addition to that, there's just concepts like astrology, and really a lot to do with quantum physics and quantum mechanics, which completely supersedes classical mechanics and classical gravity. So there's all of this means that there's forces at play that we can't see. There's a subtle energy body. There's the fact that you can't ignore that even if your eyes are closed and someone walks into a room, you feel their energy, right? So
Yeah,
So
and
there's
that's
a lot
stuff that we'll definitely get into more on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the black hole things is really cool. I feel like I am very excited for you to teach me about that on here. Just the other day with Bryce, I was watching on Netflix the, like, I don't know exactly what it was called, but it was like the black hole show of some form, and like they only seen the very first one in 2017, and I just learned that, and that blew my mind. So the fact that you know so much about this and you're studying it is really, really interesting. And then it's like when you start talking about the consciousness and how everything has a consciousness, and then we're thinking, does a black hole have a consciousness? And like, let's go there. What happens if like physical matter actually goes into that, as well as, and then even in that, that's where we start to like break down how everything is energy, like down at as the molecular level.
Right. And speaking of breakdown, math breaks at the boundary of a black hole. Like literally, there's the way to describe it is at the boundary of the black hole, like inside. It's the same as dividing, like it's dividing by zero. It breaks math. So, there's boundaries of our current knowledge, and we're gonna
explore that. Like that's the kind of stuff that we're gonna get into on a little bit of a deeper level. But then for myself, so in my life, I'm just at a point where I feel like I'm just kind of figuring it out, and like, hello, spiritual awakening, and that's kind of where we are. But I've been developing over, like, I would say I was very spiritual when I was young. When I was a young kid, like I would talk to my dead grandma, and I would talk to the animals, and I would talk to the trees. And then I went through a series of different traumas where I started like pushing that piece of me down again. So then I feel like I had a spiritual awakening around 2018 when I was like called to see a medium. And we'll get into like each of these things a little bit deeper, but just like a quick bio. I was called to see this medium. I went and seen her, and she started being like, oh, you have like, you're hearing this, and you're seeing this and this and this, and like, you're not crazy, and this is what it means, and you're really meant to explore this deeper and like see where this takes you. So that really started my journey into that. And now I'm at a place where, I'm speaking with my guides and my team, which is something else that we'll get into. And I'm learning to use my intuition, connect with my intuition, that's the soul inside me, the consciousness inside me, and see where it takes me. And that's a whole other thing too with creating your reality and and how all these different realities exist, and listening to your intuition and trusting that path to kind of be that guide to point you onto what is your highest timeline in this current reality. So I'm going through learning that and building that connection and working with that. And so with that said, I do a lot of energy work and energy healing. So on my Raposa Moonchild, my own business, where I do past life regressions for people, soul readings where I connect with their guides and I'm able to channel through maybe what their intuition and their soul is telling them if they haven't quite made that channel yet, as well as helping people get to that place where they can make that channel. Because that is my biggest mission, is helping, instead of me just or me or another medium or psychic or something, like always telling you the information. I want to help people be able to do this for themselves, because that's the new era that we're moving into. And how like fucking rad would it be if every single person has this deep, deep connection with their intuition and their inner knowing and their soul, and we're all on our highest paths. Like, how is that going to look for us? How is that going to look for Mother Gaia? Where are we going to go? Like, and that's really cool. And that's also a lot more of what I want to dive into.
Yeah. And it's like with the energy stuff too, it's there's so many, like, I know you've been getting into all of these ways to, it's with energy healing, it's not just talking about it, it's connected to the body, and it's connected to the earth via magnetic fields. And I know you've been getting into a lot of other modalities and ways to understand how the energy moves through the body physically, and also ways to understand the brain and the neural pathways. And so there's so many other ways that not everyone even knows about, that to talk about and get into energy healing and moving energy through the body. And the other thing has to do with like visualizations stuff too. Magic is real. Our intentions.
Magic is real.
Our intentions create energy vortexes around us, and so there's actually a lot that people can do with their own visualization and their own mind to heal them. And just remind everybody that the placebo effect in science is completely not understood at all, which means that people can take a medicine thinking, and it's not a medicine, and they think it's a medicine and they get better, and just nobody understands.
Totally. And I think it's really cool because we're talking about this energy unlocking, I guess, or maybe understanding it. And as we're talking about it, we're also on this journey of figuring this out for ourselves and kind of like going to the next level of understanding and learning and just having a channel. This is what this is, a channel to express that through for whoever else like wants to hear it, needs to hear it. Because I definitely feel like what I've learned, other people are going to want to hear too, or they need to hear. I don't know, DNA unlocking, I suppose. That's what I'm thinking. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get.
No, exactly. And the other thing is, I guess, to kind of transition about, we also want to talk about why we are starting this podcast and even a little bit about like how we met and how we know each other. But just before that, kind of like to go off of that intention, astrophysically, there is something that most people can tell, something is very different has been going on with the planet in the last few years. And I feel like that's really kind of the overall theme, or something that's really motivating me, is trying to understand the astrophysics of what's going on. I've heard a lot of different potential ideas put forth, but I really want, I think a big part of our intention with this is to have people be aware that something is going on with the planet. It's measurably raising in frequency. And there's something going on, and there's a reason that a lot of things have been happening in the last few years, and there's an explanation for it, and it's going to naturally cause people to start wanting to seek answers in themselves, in the universe, in the world, and so that's another reason, kind of why we're really putting this out there, because some people have realized it. Some people will realize soon that the circumstances are going to and have already started causing people to seek answers elsewhere from where they have normally been seeking them. And so that's part of what we really want to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I think it's just like this opening up of like a curiosity to have a deeper understanding, to like, what is this? Where did we come from? Like, and these are like, I think, questions that have always been around, but I've definitely seen an increase in people like really wanting to know this on, and even like a soul level of understanding themselves on a soul level.
Right. We're in a great awakening. We're in an ascension cycle of the planet, and what it means is we're moving from like mind-centered consciousness to heart-centered consciousness, and we're transitioning into more oneness. And the reason and we're transitioning to a space where more people are going to start living from the heart. And so when I say that, it doesn't even just mean like a nice phrase to say, like, oh, that's nice, like I'm gonna live from my heart. Like, the heart is the center of your electromagnetic field, and so there's a unity. So that has to do with like these ideas of unity consciousness. And so when you live from the heart, you're moving like where your consciousness is originating to a more centered, grounded point. And so that has to do with just our overall moving into unity consciousness. So that's part of the transition that everyone is kind of undergoing right now, whether you realized it yet or not. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I think in other episodes we'll get into more too. Like, what does ascending mean? What does awakening mean? And like getting into that a little bit more. What does unity consciousness mean?
Exactly. So these are kind of
and what does it mean to you? Why should you care?
Exactly. So how do we know each other, and why did we start this podcast? Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, of course.
Start explaining some?
So funny enough, we actually met through another podcast. Alyssa and I have never met in person. We first of all started with very long text exchanges that turned into voice memos, because who has time to sit down and text that shit? I certainly don't. And then we found that we were able to channel through each other. But yeah, we met on another podcast called Chatty Broads, which is really interesting because they're ending their cycle of their podcast just around the same time that I think we're going to be launching and starting our podcast. So That's really interesting. But yeah, we met through them, and I don't remember, to be honest, I don't remember exactly how. I think I made some type of post because the Chatty Broads have a Facebook page, and so everyone's in there. And I think I made a post about spirituality and who is spiritual, and some people commented on it, but you specifically commented on it. But there might have been a comment before that, to be honest, on a different post where I like messaged you and I was like, "Yo, what do you think about this?" I feel like I want to, for the podcast, at some point, I want to scroll up and see what our first like exchanges were.
Oh, I know, right? No, I remember well. It was I was in a keyboard warrior stage of my life. I was I think I was commenting about something spiritual or something that had to do with like the deep state government. It was something that had to do with and
at the time, because this was like early 2020.
It was summer 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, it was summer 2020, and I commented something about my beliefs about kind of just things about the way that things operate on the planet.
Yeah, and I resonated with that, and I'm pretty sure I reached out and I messaged you, and from there we just...
and you were like, hey, I also think this. And I was like, oh my God, it's so cool.
And at the time, it was kind of, I feel like, a lonely time in the world. Like it was, especially when it came to like beliefs and what sometimes you resonated with and what you didn't. And when it felt like nobody else around me was resonating with these things, to find somebody else that did, that really like opened up a door. And it also felt like a safe space. And it was a huge space. Like, I mean, we're here now. And I feel like since then we've talked through and chatted through a bunch of things, and it's just been a place to bounce things off each other, as well as just like share and develop. Like, I feel like we've held space for each other hugely in our self-development, spiritual development, whatever. Yeah. Since then, human development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know, we exchanged that we both enjoy the same channelers. And I would say that the extent into spirituality and these concepts that we are into have to do are pretty intense, and at the time definitely not that many people were following these kinds of people and ideas, because it's things that have to do with ETs. And we I would say in the last few years, my psychic and spiritual interest really kind of took on a whole new meaning, a whole new level of understanding when I started learning about extraterrestrials and how we can communicate with them telepathically. And these are things that not everyone around you is going to know about or agree with. But
or
these
believe
are or believe in. But these are the kinds of things that we're going to be doing and talking about. And that's part of our intention is really letting people know, because just we can go around and plant the seeds in conversations, and we do. And I've had many great conversations with people in the last year, and kind of teaching them if they're asking or if they're willing to learn about these kinds of things, and encouraging people to watch Ancient Aliens. And we're kind of just on the same wavelength of really in that stage of seeking. And you kind of go, when you have an awakening, you really go through this stage where you're just seeking and absorbing information. And we kind of went through that stage in the last few years together a bit.
Big time. Well, and then, so we started out probably talking kind of here and there about topics like, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And I'll say right now, we talk every single day. Yeah. Every day, like just voice memos back and forth. So that's the evolution of our relationship and where we got to. And then I guess through our own spiritual journeys and holding space together, we decided that it would be really cool and felt right to have a channel to kind of bring this information through. So here we are.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually had wanted to start a podcast a few years ago. I was always planning on starting some kind of podcast talking about the universe, even just the standard like academic astronomy concepts. Like, I love talking to people, teaching them about the universe. And especially once I really started getting into the intersection of astrophysics and spirituality and astrology and things like that, and dimensions, and really just trying to understand those things, I knew I wanted to talk about it. And then I believe actually this podcast was your idea, I think at the end of 2021. And
was it? I honestly don't remember. That's so bad.
It was your idea. And now it's evolved into what we see as a really great collaboration of these ideas, and because I really want to bring things to the universe, and I want to use this as a chance for myself to just give myself space to think more about these things, and really let the information come through.
And also for it to come through for anyone else who resonates with it or would like to hear it, because we were also in that space where we were like, Elizabeth April was another big one that we really loved, that we were like listening to and bouncing ideas off of, and how does this feel in your body, how does this resonate. Fuck, there was something else I was going to say with that, but I forget. Oh, I was just going to say, because you were talking about how when you had your spiritual awakening and you're like learning about astrology and you're learning about this and this and this, and how you wanted to like bring those things forward and like how real they are, and same with the consciousness. And like for me, even with the energy work, it's like I was getting to this point where I was connecting with other beings, or I had these experiences that no one else could explain, with like on the other side of the veil, and connecting with something. And like that felt really like at first unknown and unexplainable. But then when that happens, just like your whole world opens up and you're like, okay. And this even goes to, I feel like I moved from a place when I was younger of being Christian and then to not being anything, and then like trying to figure out where I fit spiritually. But being able to connect with something on the other side or past this veil really like solidifies in my mind, and I'm sure other people that have had these experiences too, of wow, there's more to this. Like energy is real and it can move in ways that we don't see. And yeah, what does happen to me after I die? We really do have souls. Like this soul is able to connect with me. So like we go somewhere. Where is that? What happens? And it really like opened that door to just being like, realizing that there's just this huge universal consciousness, and then wanting to seek more with that.
Right. And what I've realized a lot just in the last few years of talking to people, or definitely recently, I've been more comfortable telling people the truth of what I'm into, and really being a bit more honest about my beliefs, because of course, not gonna lie, it's difficult around academia to discuss these things. But what I really learned from talking to anyone about it, really, not even people just in academia, is that people, a lot of people will store in the back of their mind a few weird experiences that they have. Or if I start talking about this, someone will be like, well, like, I'm not sure how much I believe in that, but there was this one time where this really weird thing happened, or this was this one time where I couldn't explain this, or they'll explain a synchronicity or something, where they'll explain kind of like a mediumship story, which is a spirit coming through, or we call ghosts, or seeing a ghost, or whatever. And people kind of bank these things in the back of their mind, and people are a lot more curious than they might even be willing to admit, is what I've learned. So
yeah, I think so. There's also just like, it's getting better, but in certain areas, probably especially with academia, a societal kind of, I don't know, impression, I don't think that's the right word, but around some of these things. And then that's what kept us being like, oh, I don't really want to talk about this with my friends or my family. And that's where we'd really bounce things off of each other and make us feel just a little bit less crazy.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so for me, luckily, so I do have a relatively spiritual family, and one of my sisters is a energy healer as well, but she does kind of the specific modality called body talk, but it really has to do with listening to the intelligence of your body, because every cell of ours is alive. So there's an innate intelligence that the body has. And so my sister has been practicing that for over 10, 15 years. And my brother is also spiritual, so I feel fortunate that I kind of have this a bit of a pre-existing support system, and some, or at least people to grow in these ideas with, you know.
Yeah, that's cool. I feel like, no, my parents are definitely like not on that level, which is totally, I mean, it's like they can listen to me and be like, yeah, okay, and like they're open-minded about it, or like I can talk about maybe like some things with my dad that maybe get like a little bit like political and stuff, but and even like I feel like coming from kind of the small town I came from, there was definitely not really a belief around that. It was very like, oh, things like tarot are bad and psychic mediums are bad, and like I came from a town that was full of a lot of like Catholicism, Christianity, so there was also like that belief that I had to break through. But I feel like I have like a very supportive partner. And then like my sister, she also believes in this stuff and she can actually see spirits, but she's a little bit younger than me and kind of going through her own dark night of the soul, or whatever you want to call it right now. So
as a lot of people are. So do you want to talk about like some of the let's talk about some of the concepts or some of the topics that we're gonna be talking about, or kind of an idea of what's this podcast going to look like what's what are the kind of things we're going to be talking about and doing on the podcast. So in general, right, Orphic means beyond ordinary understanding. So there's not necessarily going to be a single narrow focus of the podcast, but it's going to be how you can explain that concept of beyond ordinary, right? Because we've been living our whole lives with some idea of what we think is real. We've also been living in this linear framework of time where we have only experienced everything from one perspective our entire lives. And I feel like that's whenever I talk about this with anyone, that's what I try to emphasize, is that everything is true. Everything that we've experienced is true from our perspective, but we've all only experienced one perspective, and that's not necessarily the only perspective. And so as far as topics or in general, like I'm going to be bringing some astrophysics concepts in terms of the things that I've learned in school over the years, the things that I've learned along my PhD. But I really want to be exploring some new ideas of how we can incorporate consciousness to some of those concepts. But I also have a lot of other things I want to talk about. So things like quantum physics, things that have to do with glitches in the matrix, like the Mandela effect. And this all has to do with how your intention energizes different realities. The other thing I want to focus on is things like numerology, and sacred geometry. So everything in the universe is kind of repeating patterns and shapes, and numbers are true. They describe dimensions of things.
What about infinity? I was watching that too. I'm so interested about that after I've seen it.
The concept of infinity. I want to talk a lot about magnetic fields, because magnetic fields are extremely important to everything. The earth has a magnetic field. Your body has a magnetic field. Magnetic fields are a topic that are very poorly understood in astrophysics, but they're everywhere. So I want to talk a lot about that. I want to talk about crystals, crystal consciousness. Here's my angel aura quartz.
Loves her crystals.
Crystals are alive. They have an intelligence. They are different from plastic. Crystals are extremely interesting. So I want to talk about that. And also things like extraterrestrials. Are they here? How can we communicate with them?
What do they want from us?
What do they want from us? How we can communicate with them. Are they on the planet? Are they in the planet? There might be inner Earth civilizations. The elementals. When you go into the woods, there's there's fairies, there's all these things that exist that we can't see with the eyes.
And also explaining that, because I think that's also really interesting too.
Yes.
When we get into the different spectrums and like where a human sits on the spectrum of light, sound, etc.
Right, exactly. And also the energetics, the energetics of the universe, dimensions, things like dark matter, things like cosmology, Big Bang Theory, what we know, what we don't know, what are the big unanswered questions about how the universe formed. There's a lot of things that I want to get into. Really, like, and then this is a good transition to you, but there's so much with the connection between the consciousness of the body, the consciousness of the solar system, and honestly the consciousness of the whole universe, and that gets into astrology a little bit. But I do really believe that we're entangled with the planets. We're kind of we're a collective consciousness with the planets. So there's things like that, and given that, there's the nervous system, and there's and there's the motion of your hands, and kind of how that affects the nervous system, and that can affect just a lot more with the energy body and the aura. So I think, we are not separate from the solar system. We're not separate from the universe. So when we do things and there's energy healing on us, it kind of just broadcasts out in all directions.
Ripple effect. Yeah, I'm excited. I really want to dive in and talk about all of that stuff too.
Right. So those are some of the topics that at least like I might be bringing to the table, but we're both going to be really kind of bouncing off about them. And so what are some of the things that you definitely wanted to be talking about?
Well, when you just let off there about like how we're the same as the consciousness of the universe and the solar system, I think it's important to remember too that we're the consciousness of each other. And like I'd like to get into like how we're fractals of one another, right. And how if this is your belief, if I'm God, you're also God too, and so are the trees and the sun and all of these other things. Also, I want to get into, like, you mentioned some of this stuff with like the nervous system and energy healing and energy work, but I primarily focus on like energy work and energy healing. And so kind of just like what that looks like, I'd like to get into channeling, and not just like what we're bringing through as a channel, but how can you channel? Like, how can you as a listener start to learn the practice of channeling, connecting to your intuition and what that looks like, different practices with that, different practices to regulate your nervous system. Let me think what else. I feel like there's just like, there's a lot.
Well, also like mediumship too, and I'm not even sure if we defined that, which, because some people, I guess don't know, which is just connecting with humans specifically that have crossed over.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think, and that's with the channeling too. And I do want to do a lot on just like how someone else can do this and get into these things, like even like empaths. Like I definitely resonate with being an empath. So at the beginning of my journey, it's like I got bogged down by all this like extra energy, and it's like, how do you weed through that? How do you learn to understand your energy as well as someone else's energy, and then put up boundaries or barriers, or like what can help you get through a regular day, knowing that kind of stuff and just like discerning your energy and moving through that. So that's where we can start talking about the different energy practices, and then getting into healing. I'd really like to talk about shadow work. Like I had a period of like dark night of the soul, or whatever you'd want to call it, where I would just lay on the ground and meditate for hours at a time, but I was doing this really deep transformative shadow work where I was channeling and connecting and doing mediumship, and these were like really, really healing experiences where I worked through things like shame and guilt, and that's something that a lot of us carry. So I think there's this element of learning to like unlock these pieces of yourself, learning to sit with all of yourself as this soul, and then through that learning to like become a channel and trust your intuition, if that makes sense. Like kind of what the journey of that looks like, because it does start somewhere really small, where it's like our aura if we have all this shame and guilt and all these like heavy emotions, our aura can be quite like small and compact. So how do we learn to open that and expand so that we can connect and channel and do the mediumship and have that relationship with our inner being and our inner self? And there's many things along that line of just like different practices we can do. Like I'd like to get into big time releasing and moving energy, because it's so important to move energy, especially through the body, because your emotions sit in your body and they can get trapped in there. And like, that's what causes literal like disease, ailments, illness, anxiety, depression, all of these different things. So learning to have a toolkit or the practices to move this energy. And like that can be like, there's like EFT, like tapping, just learning to have a meditation practice and what that looks like for you. And like meditation is like a huge one on so many different levels, because it can look so different for so many people. Even just things like yoga. I know you want to talk into like Kundalini. Yeah, there's like journaling, like
which has to do with the spine and like, well, just like you were saying, energy sits in the body. It's like there's so much more that can be discussed from like a different perspective that isn't normally talked about.
Also with the motion code, we're physically using magnets to actually release the trapped emotions from your body. So that's another one that I'd like to talk about, because I think each person, I was like talking with my partner about this last night, but each person is going to build their own toolkit. But like the other thing with this changing consciousness and where we're going in the world is there's going to be these waves and there's going to be these challenges that kind of keep coming up. Like I don't really know if that's going to go away. But part of my mission and something that I want to bring into the world is, okay, let's set each of us up for the best success, to have the tools in our toolkit to be able to ride these waves instead of drowned in them each time, because they're going to keep coming.
Exactly. And I think in general, I feel like it's really important to kind of just understand that anyone's healing has to be their own prerogative, right? It's like you can't force anyone to do anything. And I feel like that's why when sometimes the best way to explain these things I've found is you really just kind of explain like what they did for you. I was thinking about, like, I was talking to my cousin about meditation, or, you know, you talk to someone, or like if someone suggests meditation, you're like, oh, whatever. But to kind of just give an example, I was like, well, I kind of just noticed that the weeks that I am meditating every morning for at least 10 minutes, I just happen to be in a much better mood that whole week, and kind of just things like that. And I feel like those sharing experiences in that from that perspective gets through to people a lot differently.
Yeah, I think just even
because
sharing
you're doing it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Like what we used to move through, like from when we met in 2020, and we'll talk more of that too, maybe the place we were in mentally or spiritually, and some of the things that we did to kind of help ourselves like move through that and build that connection with our inner knowing, which is like something we're very much still working on. Because like I definitely don't want to be like, oh, we know it all and we know completely what we're doing. We definitely don't. But it's just a place, like somewhere to talk into kind of what that process has looked like for us, if it's able to help somebody else also in their process.
Yeah, exactly.
There's and I also wanted to get into getting a little bit more into like souls and like soul contracts, and like and like how we like kind of choose like to be here before, and like even volunteering to be here and why that is, and like basically too how you choose before kind of like what your life might look like.
Yeah, and that has to do a lot with reincarnation and karma, and just like karma itself is it's such an important topic, but I think it really can be extrapolated to some bigger ideas that have to do with, in general, balance and the concepts of light and dark and balance, because karma is about balance. It's like if you do too much of one thing, the boomerang comes back, and you kind of have to anything I've heard about karma or kind of have received in other readings, etc., it's always about balance. So sometimes the purpose for whatever you're doing in your current incarnation is because you had to balance out a different past life. And I just think these ideas really can be extrapolated to a lot of bigger things. All right, so that's gonna be it for the first episode. We're wrapping there. And I just want to say thank you for everyone that tuned in. We're really looking forward to, releasing a lot more episodes, getting into all of these things that we talked about. And please share this with anyone that you think might be interested in this information, that might resonate with this or think that we're cool. And so also follow us on Instagram. We're at the Orphic Podcast on Instagram. I'm at interdimensional.astrophysics on Instagram. Mikayla is at Mariposa Moonchild. And also we're on YouTube. So this episode,
like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes. So
sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, you have to please subscribe. So we're on YouTube. Every episode is also going to be out on YouTube. So listen to us, watch us there, subscribe to us on YouTube, and definitely give us a rating and review in the Apple Podcasts. We're also going to be on Spotify. And Mikayla, anything else you want to mention with, or anything else that you want to plug with your offers and stuff?
I'm just thinking if we covered all of our bases, but I think we did. YouTube, Instagram. Okay, yes. Follow us, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes. So my offers right now. Right now, I have a past life regression offer. I think I've talked about this in either one of the previous episodes or one of the episodes coming up. So you can look for that and listen to it. As well as I have a soul initiation activation reading, which is really fun, where we dive in, figure out which parts of you are going to be initiated and activated with your guides. You can start building a relationship with them, and we start working on building your magic toolbox and your tools that are specific to you in that. So those readings are really fun. One of my favorites. Then just a soul reading, which is a very general reading. I'll pull some cards. You can ask some questions. All of these are over Zoom, by the way, Zoom or FaceTime, distant. And then energy healing infused with Reiki. So I'm still working on this offer a little bit because I'm just fine tuning it. So it's my own version of energy healing, and it's very much coming from just my way of doing things. But this is a really nice way if you want to do any type of self-care. The energy healing, really nice if you just want to lay down and relax. And then I work on your body. I work on your chakra systems. I work on pieces of you that may have actual physical dis-ease or ailments or illness, as well as energetic, emotional. I go in there with this beautiful white light, cleanse and clear, and just work on those spaces. So that's really nice. If you're just feeling heaviness or even dis-ease in the body and you just want to relax and let some of that go, that's a really good session for that. So all of those, you can go over to my Instagram, and there's a link in bio where you can book, or you can just directly DM me, and especially if you have any more questions.
Awesome. Yeah, and I was gonna say that on the next episode coming out next week, you're going to be live channeling for me. Well, we recorded it already, but there's going to be some really cool channeling going on there. If you're curious about Mikayla's channeling skills. Yeah,
that one's really fun, where we dive into meeting some of Alyssa's guides. So I just channel some of her guides that come through, and you just see what they have to say and what they look like and who they are. So yeah, if you're interested in that or don't really know what that's like, but you're interested, just, check it out.
Yeah.
Check it out. Come.
Okay. Well, we're going to wrap it up then. Subscribe and follow us. Oh yeah. Also, I don't think I mentioned TikTok, but we are also on TikTok at the Orphic Podcast. So yeah, thank you everyone, and see you next week. Bye.
Bye.